Support for this series comes from NPR sponsor GoDaddy. Making a different future starts with you. That's why GoDaddy does more than help you find a name you can create, you can sell, and get found online. So any small business can be a driving force to create change or build an empire. So whatever it is you have in mind that will help make a different future, find everything you need to get started at GoDaddy.com. Because the future isn't decided yet. It's up to us to make it happen. Start different at GoDaddy.com. Hey, it's Guy here, and welcome to How I Built This Fellows Edition from NPR. For this year's How I Built This Fellowship program, we picked 10 early-stage entrepreneurs looking to take their ideas to the next level. Today, I'm talking with Toby Egbuna. Toby and his sister Dumebi are the founders of Chezie. Chezie is a platform for job seekers that they hope will create career opportunities for people from underrepresented groups. Toby and his sister are first-generation Nigerian immigrants, and while the focus of their company is inclusion, that's not exactly where Toby started.
I knew I wanted to be in business as soon as I got to school. I was like good at math, and the typical Nigerian tracks are lawyer, doctor, or business person. And I ruled out lawyer because I don't like reading like that much, and I hate science, so I ruled out being a doctor, and I chose business. So I knew I wanted to go into consulting. It just felt like a good way for me to kind of try out a bunch of different things and then figure out where I wanted to ultimately take my career. And also my dad was in consulting. So I graduated from UNC and moved to Boston to start working in management consulting. And I spent 3 years in Boston and then actually moved to New York City, shifting a little bit more into people-oriented diversity and inclusion kind of work. And then the pandemic hit. So I actually moved out of New York City, moved back home to North Carolina, and then now to Georgia.
Like many people, and as you may know if you've heard How I Built This, we've had several guests who went into consulting, but always with an eye on starting their own thing. And consulting's a great place to do that because you learn about a bunch of different industries. It sounds like that was your plan, that you would go into consulting and absorb a lot of different industries and eventually figure out your own thing.
That was exactly my plan. I thought that I would get here and, get experience in like retail and finance and all these other kind of industries. And that was not the case. I got kind of put into utilities and power generation almost from the beginning. And it was just, kind of difficult to get out. I kind of established my network there. And, our projects are a year and a half long. So that's kind of how it ended up working. But I was really focused on finding a way to get back to UNC. So I got involved with the diversity recruiting team because, this was like my opportunity to go back to campus every now and then and help other Black students get this job that I'd been so fortunate to get. And that's actually kind of how I got into diversity and inclusion work. I just kind of realized that I had a passion for like creating opportunities or just helping people realize the opportunities that were out there for them, especially people that look like me or people from other historically underrepresented groups. So that's kind of where the interest came from.
So did you start to think, maybe there's some kind of business around this area that I can create? Was that where sort of the gears in your head started turning?
No, that's not what I thought, actually. I thought that, so typically people go into consulting and they work 2 to 3 years and then they go somewhere else, right? Yeah. They go into what we call industry. Right. So I was actually thinking, okay, I've done my 2 years. So I was really applying to a bunch of diversity and inclusion analyst, program manager, jobs like that. And this is 3 years ago before everything happened last summer. So there were jobs out there, but companies weren't really serious about hiring for it.
Yeah.
And I remember I found a job at Lyft. I didn't have anyone in my network that worked at Lyft. So I went on LinkedIn and I was just Googling, or I was just looking up people that work at Lyft in New York City. And I found myself looking to speak to Black people because I figured that their experiences would be most similar to mine. And I also was kind of like, trying to find like my community or like my tribe of people in the office at Lyft before I decided to apply. And it was difficult because, it was kind of laborious for me to go through LinkedIn every time like that and kind of ultimately just kind of figure out what it's like to be Black there. And I kind of took that sentiment to my sister and just said, there's not really a way for you to know what it's like to be Black or, in her case, a Black woman or gay or disabled or whatever at a company. And that was kind of the impetus for actually us wanting to start Chezie was that experience, at least for me, was that experience of literally wanting to get this information for myself at Lyft and not being able to.
So, there was and is Glassdoor, right? You can go to Glassdoor and you can kind of get a sense, depending on if your company is represented on Glassdoor, of what it might be like to work there. But You essentially were like, but there's nothing that that can tell me what the experience might be like for me as a Black man, or for an Asian woman, or for somebody who is a minority or marginalized. There's nothing like that out there, and that was really this kind of sounds like almost like a light bulb moment.
Yeah, it was. It was. Like, I mean, everyone uses Glassdoor, but I think Glassdoor is just it's very one size fits all.
Yeah,
You know, a lot of the reviews that they have are very hot or cold. It's very much like, I didn't get the job. This company
right.
sucks. Don't ever work here. Or it's like, it almost seems like the people were like paid to put a positive review.
Yeah,
They're like so glowing. It's like, this doesn't seem realistic.
yeah.
But the biggest thing is that, you know, you don't know who submitted the review. And therefore, it's kind of hard to put yourselves in the shoes of that person. So we kind of really wanted to make our reviews, we call them stories, our story specific to the person that's trying to find this information. So we added what we call portraits to them. So like I can go on and find stories with portraits of Black men, you know, 21 to 30, not disabled, et cetera. Like, or you can just, you know, any combination of those. And that the idea is that you're finding stories from people that identify similarly to you with our platform.
So you come up with this idea and you call it Chezie, and tell me about the name.
So we actually launched as Diversify.
Uh-huh.
I don't even know how we came up with that name, but it was spelled Dyversifi. And then in January of this year, we kind of decided to rebrand to Chezie. So again, we're Nigerian. My sister and I are Nigerian. We're of the Igbo tribe. So Chezie is the Igbo word for reflect. And it kind of just symbolizes, you know, the idea of job seekers doing some self-reflection and figuring out what it is that I want out of a workplace, but also companies doing reflection to say, like, are we serving our employees properly? What can we do to improve? That sort of thing.
So tell me where you are right now. What I mean, can you go in and start to use it?
Yeah. Chezie, we are live. We have around 1,400 stories from companies like Google, Goldman Sachs, Facebook. We have around 1,200 people signed up for our platform, maybe around 1,250. I haven't checked today. And we actually just launched a new community feature. So if you recall the Lyft story that I told you, part of me was trying to figure out what it's like to be Black at a company, but also part of me was trying to kind of find other Black people that I could connect with in my search.
Yeah.
And the idea behind this community feature is we want to give job seekers a way to interact with the people that are already at a company and kind of like get a feel for their culture and message them, talk to them directly. But also we want to give companies a way to go past the post and pray kind of model is what I call it of recruiting, where every company right now is trying to recruit diverse talent, but they're all just kind of like posting some jobs over here, some jobs over here, some jobs over here, and hoping that they get found. This is kind of a way for them to be more proactive about the recruiting and like putting their culture out there by making their internal communities of talent, diverse talent, more accessible to candidates.
What if, I mean, presumably there are going to be some people who want to post anonymously. They
Right.
may be at the company, but they don't want people to know who they are because maybe they had a difficult or challenging experience. Is that possible? Can you do that?
Yeah, so all of our stories are anonymous. The only kind of identifying piece of it is you can choose to like display or provide as much information as you want in terms of your portrait. You just have to provide one portrait trait. So I could, you know, fill out Black male, 21 to 30, heterosexual, disabled or not disabled, not a veteran, or I could just say Black,
Yeah.
right? And the idea behind that is obviously, you know, if you work at a 200-person company and there's 3 Black people, it's really easy to identify who it is that submitted this review or this story. So yeah, we took that into consideration and try to make it as anonymous and kind of identity protecting as possible.
Toby, we've interviewed Jeremy Stoppelman, the founder of Yelp, on how I built this before. And as you probably know, one of the knocks on Yelp or even Glassdoor is that is that businesses say, well, we don't know who's reviewing us, and we can't verify even if they've been to the restaurant. They might be a competitor. And so how are you able to make sure that the people doing the reviews are really who they say they are?
Yeah, for these initial reviews that we've gotten, we've actually just called up people,
Right.
literally. So we've done a lot of like, we call them story interviews. So I've spoken to people from those companies that I mentioned before, and I'll ask them a number of questions about their experience with promotions and their relationships with the managers and diversity programs. What we found is that one, it's very easy to validate that someone works at the company because obviously they're posting anonymously, but with the conversations that we have are very one-on-one and intimate, like we're having right now. But then two, we get a much more complete picture of their job experience. And I realize that when people think of like a Glassdoor for minorities, they immediately think like people are coming here to bash their companies. That's not the case. A lot of the stories that we've gathered are positive. And what we found is that they're like, small details that people wish were improved, right? They wish their manager would give them more space to speak up in a meeting. They wish that their company would be a little bit more intentional about the diversity programs that they're doing, right? Things like that, that companies that are actually like valuable insights for companies to know that, oh, we're doing an overall a pretty good job, an okay job. There are just some smaller things about our employee experience that we need to improve upon.
So in the future, do you expect that all the content on Chezie will go through an editorial process, like your team will be doing interviews of people, or do you think that people will be able to directly post from their computers?
So people can go on, like you could go on Guide and post about NPR if you wanted to tomorrow. Most of the stories that we gathered have been through this story interview process. And I realized that it isn't super scalable, but my sister and I have had conversations to say, like, what if this was scalable? We get a very complete picture of someone's experience here through these story interviews. And to me, 10,000 of these very complete, insightful stories is worth more than 100,000 it's bad, it's good, my manager sucked reviews that you might see on other sites.
Yeah, the curated content is going to be way more valuable than the user-generated content.
Exactly. So we're actively thinking about how we can make this story review process part of our business. Yes, that probably means that we have fewer stories than another review site, but we can guarantee you that the information that you find from the stories that we do have will be insightful and powerful and much more useful during your job search.
I know that you have written about being a founder of a business. It's and I think you have an essay called "The Hardest Part About Being a Founder," which is a wonderful essay. Tell me what's the hardest part about being a founder?
The hardest part for me in this, this year and a half that we've been on it has been the ambiguity. We had an idea that we were going to be this Glassdoor for minorities, and we would just put this idea out there and it would take off. Like literally, I thought that we would hit publish the next day, be one of those crazy success stories. We had 100,000 hits, all these stories. That did not happen. And I think that we've been at a consistent crossroads between, like, do we create something that job seekers love, or do we create something that can be very viable to businesses? Because it kind of seems like we almost have to choose, at least in this initial stage. Like, do we help companies? Do we help job seekers? We can't necessarily do both right away. And then we've just had so many discussions about, like, should we focus all on these stories? Should we offer like a consulting arm? Like, we just have no idea what we're doing. And I think the hardest part is that ambiguity of what actually should I do? Right? And how do I kind of move forward? I am very much a planner. Like, I'm the person that maps out his itinerary for a trip and everything like that. So like, that's not super conducive with being a founder and running a business where you don't know what you're doing. So a lot of it has just been, having the conviction to say, like, we're doing this. We're going to try it for 3 months. If it doesn't work, we learn something. We move on to the next thing.
As part of your How I Built This fellowship, you will be attending a bunch of workshops, and you attended the welcome session hosted by me and Troy Carter. What was your takeaway from that? What was the thing that you walked away from that with?
I mean, I think this entire time it's been myself and my sister. And a lot of the conversation that we have with Troy was around like managing a team. I'm the CEO. I wouldn't say that I've been managing my sister's work. She's CMO. She runs everything that you see about Chezie in news or social media or anything like that, she runs. So I haven't necessarily been managing her, but I'm actively thinking about now, like, eventually we're going to get a CTO on. We're going to get some product people on. We're going to get some designers. Like, we're going to have a team of people that I'm kind of going to be responsible for leading and pointing in the right direction. I think that was my biggest takeaway, is just like, you want to get people in that can do a role and just take off.
In terms of leaders, how can you hire the smartest people and just let them make their mistakes? How do you give them resources to mentors outside of the company or maybe inside of the company, but being able to help them level up as well and giving them a path to it? But I just believe, can you hire really smart people and just get out of their way?
I think we're a very mission-driven business, right? And I'm very excited to have a team of people that are equally invested in solving this problem that Demaby and I started this company for.
If you and your sister win this pitch competition, how do you think you would use the $50,000 grant?
If we win the pitch competition, that's the jump. Because we're still working full time. We're still working at our full-time jobs. I think this would be the jump that we need to transition into full time. Part of that money would go towards kind of sustaining ourselves, and then part of it will also go towards web development. I've been making it all myself, just learning how to code/not code. That money would definitely go towards web development and building out a more solid web software product, and us going full time.
That's Toby Egbuna, co-founder and CEO of Chezie. Thanks for watching How I Built This Fellows Edition. For more information about the Fellows, go to summit.npr.org/fellows. This message comes from NPR sponsor GoDaddy. Making a different future starts with you. GoDaddy helps you create, sell, and get found online so you can create change or build an empire. Start different at GoDaddy.com.